What if the tiny street singer you ignored today turned out to be the missing heartbeat of a billionaire's frozen soul? What if one song could rewrite fate, expose betrayal, and turn a 5-year-old orphan into the most protected, daddy's girl, in the city? This is not just a story, it's a miracle wrapped in mystery, a truth buried for 5 long years, and a love powerful enough to melt a ruthless CEO. Watch till the end for the shocking twist no one saw coming, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more heart-stopping, emotional stories that stay with you forever. The rain had been falling over the glittering skyline of Karachi like the sky itself was grieving, blurring the golden lights of the financial district where Hussein Global Holdings stood tall like an untouchable empire, owned by the coldest, most disciplined businessman in the country, Zion Hussein, a man the media called the Ice King, a billionaire CEO who trusted numbers more than people and contracts more than hearts, a man who had not smiled in 5 years, not since the night his world had shattered in a hospital corridor where a doctor's trembling voice had told him that the woman he loved had died in childbirth along with their baby girl, leaving him alone with silence, regret, and a tiny pink bracelet he never had the courage to throw away. And since that night Zion had buried himself in power, building towers and crushing competitors, convincing himself that emotions were weaknesses, that love was a liability, that fate had robbed him once and would never get the chance again. But fate, as he would soon learn, had been waiting patiently on a rain-soaked sidewalk beneath a broken street lamp where a 5-year-old girl with tangled curls and impossibly bright eyes stood barefoot in the puddles, clutching a cheap microphone connected to a battered speaker, singing with a voice too big for her tiny body, a voice that carried pain and hope in the same breath. And that night as Zion's black Rolls-Royce slowed at a red signal, irritated by traffic, his attention snapped toward that voice like a thread pulling at something buried deep inside his chest, because the melody she sang was not random. It was the exact lullaby he had once composed for his unborn daughter, a tune he had never shared publicly, a tune only 2 people in the world had known, him and the woman he lost, and the sound of it pouring from the lips of a street child made his pulse stop. His driver asking if he should roll up the tinted window because of the rain, but Zion whispered a hoarse no, stepping out despite the downpour, shoes soaking in muddy water as he walked toward the little singer whose dress was too thin for the cold and whose eyes lifted toward him without fear, and when she looked at him something impossible happened. He saw his own gaze reflected back, the same sharp tilt of the brows, the same stubborn curve of the mouth, as if he were staring into a miniature mirror of himself. And the crowd around them blurred while she finished the final note and the applause was scattered and careless, but Zion felt as though the universe had just screamed in his face, and he crouched down, voice unsteady, asking her softly where she learned that song, and the girl tilted her head with innocent confusion, saying, "Mama used to sing it to me before she went to Allah," and the word mama hit him like a bullet, because his wife had died, or so he had been told, 5 years ago. And yet here stood a child of the exact age his daughter would have been, singing the lullaby he had written in secret, and when he asked her name she replied, "My name is Ira. Ira Zay." Before stopping awkwardly and correcting herself, Ira Noor, as if she had almost said something forbidden, and a strange chill ran down his spine while thunder cracked above them, and he asked where her father was, and she shrugged with a smile that tried to be brave, saying she didn't have one. That mama said her daddy was a hero in a tall building, who would come one day when Allah decided his heart was ready, and the world tilted, because Zion had once jokingly told his pregnant wife that if he ever became heartless she should tell their daughter he was a hero trapped in a tall building waiting to be rescued, and that was a private joke no one else knew, and suddenly coincidence was no longer coincidence but a trail of clues screaming the same impossible truth. And yet anger quickly followed hope because if this child was his then someone had lied, someone had stolen 5 years from him, and his mind flashed back to the night of the supposed tragedy, to his mother insisting he not see the bodies because the accident had disfigured them, to the rushed burial handled by hospital management connected to his family's influence, to the nurse who avoided eye contact, to the way his mother had gripped his shoulder too tightly and whispered that it was Allah's will. And doubt he had buried began clawing its way up like a beast demanding answers, but before he could ask more a group of older boys approached, demanding money from Ira, mocking her and trying to snatch her speaker, and something feral awakened inside Zion as he stood, towering over them with a single glare that sent them scattering, and Ira looked at him with wide admiration, calling him Uncle Hero. and without thinking he removed his expensive coat and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders, feeling an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest, and he asked who she lived with, and she hesitated before pointing toward a dim alley where an old woman sat in a wheelchair beneath a plastic sheet, coughing weakly, and Ira ran to her, introducing her as Nani, explaining that Mama had passed away 2 years ago from illness and Nani couldn't work, so Ira sang to buy medicine, and Zion's heart clenched because the timeline didn't match the hospital story at all. If his wife had died 5 years ago, how had this child's mother lived until 2 years ago? And he approached the old woman, whose eyes widened in shock when she recognized him instantly, whispering his name with a mixture of fear and relief, and that reaction confirmed what logic already suspected. She knew him, and she knew the truth, and through broken breaths she begged him not to take Ira away yet, saying she had promised her daughter to protect the child until the right time, and Zion demanded answers, voice shaking with suppressed rage, and the old woman revealed a conspiracy so cruel it made his vision blur. 5 years ago his powerful mother had bribed hospital officials to fake the death certificates because she believed Zion's wife was unworthy, a middle-class girl who had trapped her son, and during complications in childbirth when the baby was born prematurely but alive, his mother seized the opportunity, declaring the child dead to Zion while secretly sending the mother and baby away to a distant neighborhood with hush money and threats, isolating them, forcing them into silence, and when Zion's wife tried to contact him later, she was blocked by security and warned that approaching would destroy him publicly, and heartbroken yet determined to protect her daughter from a family that had rejected her, she raised Ira alone until illness took her life, leaving the child with her grandmother and a lullaby as the only link to her father. And as the confession spilled into the rainy night, Zion felt 5 years of grief transform into a storm of fury and guilt, because while he had been drowning in loneliness inside penthouses and boardrooms, his daughter had been singing in the streets, and he knelt before Ira, tears mixing with rain, asking softly if she would trust him to take her somewhere warm just for the night, and Ira studied him with an uncanny seriousness beyond her age before placing her tiny hand in his, saying, "Okay, Uncle Hero," and that simple gesture shattered the last wall around his heart, and he carried her into the Rolls-Royce while the city watched unaware that an empire was about to shake from within, and the next morning headlines exploded when paparazzi captured the ruthless CEO entering his headquarters holding the hand of a little girl in oversized designer clothes, whispers spreading that he had secretly adopted a child, but inside the glass-walled office a DNA test confirmed what his soul already knew, 99.99% probability. Ira was his daughter, and when he saw the results his knees nearly gave out, because the miracle he had mourned as dead was alive, breathing, giggling in the waiting room with crayons, and in that moment he vowed silently that anyone who stole those 5 years would answer for it, even if it meant confronting his own mother, and the confrontation was volcanic, his mother denying at first before cracking under evidence and fury, claiming she did it to protect the family name, to prevent scandal, insisting he would have ruined his future for a woman beneath their status, but Zion's voice cut through her justifications like ice breaking, declaring that she had not protected him but broken him, that she had robbed him of fatherhood and robbed a child of safety, and he made the unprecedented decision to step down temporarily from company leadership to focus on rebuilding what mattered, shocking shareholders, but for the first time in years he did not care about stock prices, only about bedtime stories and doctor checkups and making up for lost hugs. And Ira, now officially Ira Zion Hussein, moved into the mansion that once felt like a museum of grief, filling its halls with laughter and questions and stubborn demands for pink walls, and at first she called him Uncle, unsure how to bridge 5 missing years, but one night during a thunderstorm she had a nightmare and ran into his room, climbing into his bed and whispering, "Daddy, are you my hero in the tall building?" And the word daddy, soft and fragile, was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. And he held her close, promising that no one would ever send her away again. And yet the story did not end there, because the scandal reached media, investigations opened against hospital officials, and Zion's mother faced public disgrace. But instead of revenge he chose transparency, donating millions to build maternal healthcare centers named after his late wife, determined that no other mother would be silenced by power. And as months passed Ira enrolled in the best school yet still insisted on singing, her voice now echoing in charity galas instead of sidewalks, and every time she performed she ended with the same lullaby, dedicating it to "My Hero Daddy," and Zion would watch from the front row, No longer the Ice King but a father unashamed of tears, realizing that the greatest empire he could ever build was not made of glass towers but of trust restored and love reclaimed, and the twist that once felt like a cruel joke of fate revealed itself as divine timing, because if he had discovered her earlier while still blinded by ambition, perhaps he would not have understood her worth, but losing her once had taught him how fiercely to hold on, and the city that once feared him now admired him, the billionaire who knelt in puddles for a barefoot singer, the CEO who traded power for bedtime stories, and as for Ira, the little street singer who caught a CEO's eye, she became more than an heiress, she became the heartbeat of a man reborn. Proof that miracles sometimes wear muddy shoes and sing in the rain, and that even the coldest hearts can melt when a tiny voice calls them daddy.